So, what are psychedelics, or entheogens, or empathogens, or MDMA, or magic mushrooms? A lot of these things I didn't know about. My name is Alan Wiederhold, and I am the CEO of Neuma Health. And 2 years ago, I started on this incredible journey of rediscovery. I wrote a book called Walking in the Garden, Discovering God Through Psychedelics. And it was the last place on earth I thought I would end up. Growing up in the 80s, like probably so many, uh, I was told drugs were wrong. I remember the Nancy Reagan dare cars and just saying no to drugs and seeing the videos of people going crazy and all of these things. What was interesting about that is I grew up in Dallas, where I later learned that was kind of ground zero for this party drug called ecstasy. But what I didn't know then, what exactly it was. I grew up again in a very conservative Christian home, and everything that I was told again during the '80s, backward masking and everything was a sin. And I remember trying to figure out who I was as a teen in the '80s. I struggled. I am a child trauma survivor, and for most of my life, I remember struggling with identity and trying to figure out who I was and what I believed. And then you have all these things that you tackle on, like this Christian movement and this God and this no to drugs. And there was just all this, like, I almost want to think repression. And as I got older and I went into the military and I started to try to figure out who I was, I tried to figure it out in so many ways. And what ultimately ended up happening is I lost my identity along the way because I never really had it. So when I decided to do psychedelics, it was really kind of a last ditch effort for me, like so many others. I was so depressed, trying to figure out who I was. I was leading teams and very successful on the outside, but on the inside, I didn't know who I was. I had no identity. I tried to do whatever I could to fit in. I tried to do whatever I could to find myself and to feel pain. I did Ironmans and ultra distance marathons, and I hit into work, and I built a life that anybody that would look at it would think, "Wow, man, this guy really has it together." That was so far from the truth. So I remember sitting down with my doctor. It was 2 years ago, and we were having this conversation around psychedelics and psychedelic assisted therapy and what it all meant. And all I knew was that it was drugs. And I remember my doctor saying to me, bro, I give you medications from a lab. I don't even know where they come from. And you take them without even thinking about it. And we're talking about stuff that God had created. And I remember sitting there and thinking differently. Like, what if? Like, what if he was right? What if there were some things that were going on in the world that maybe I didn't have the answers to the way that I thought I did. And maybe it was in a way where maybe right and wrong maybe weren't as simple as that, or maybe right and wrong became someone's other version of right and wrong. So I went on a quest. I went on this journey to figure out everything that I could about psychedelics. And I remember going to this retreat and having this experience where the very first thing that I saw was a fight between my parents. I was four. It shaped everything that I had thought about money and later on in life. I saw another door where I actually relived my abuse. I relived my abuse 3 times during the course of this 3.5 hour stressful, traumatic event. And at the end of it, I was actually forgiving my abuser. We were sitting on the bed and he was crying. And I ended up calling him 48 years later and forgiving him. And I remember getting off the phone and thinking, if I could do that, I could do anything. But then what does that really mean? Anything. If I can do anything. So I started a podcast called The Cost of Doing Nothing. And I talked about imposter syndrome as an entrepreneur and a business owner and leading teams. And my team, as I was in this journey of self-discovery, was kind of hearing everything there was to know about the backstory. So as I'm trying to figure out the go forward story, I realized that I had been fighting for such a long time that after I was done with my first assisted therapy session and I'm meeting with my integration coach, that I, like so many others who have had these profound, incredible experiences, said, I want to go do that. I want to go help other people. And I did that. I went and became a facilitator. I went and did clinical work. I sat with people and I learned how to do it. I learned talk therapy. And it was the furthest place I thought I would ever be. Being an entrepreneur in a political science and wanting to be an attorney my whole life to finding out now that I want to help people like myself. It was a really interesting last year. And then somewhere along the line in that, I found a bigger calling and a bigger purpose. And that was really not so much to facilitate people, but it was really more along the lines of helping try to diffuse what some of this noise is. You know, I've heard so many things that are confusing, and there's so many people who are so this and they're that. And psychedelics are great, but I've also heard stories from others that it wasn't so great and that it's unlocked other things. And then I've learned about the brain and having these incredible conversations with neurosurgeons and people that are studying the brain, and they learned and have taught about the plasticity of the things that we don't even know the capabilities of what our minds can actually do. So I created this show, Neuma, the Crossroad of Science and Enlightenment, for a couple of reasons. One, as I was doing my research before I went into my first psychedelic experience, I began to hear Michael Pollan say white coat shamanism. And that was something that really stuck with me because there is this line where we're trying to figure out how we bring in Western science with old world therapies and old world medicines. For lack of a better word, I call them medicine because that's exactly what they have been for so many other people. And over the last 2 years, I have done so many different psychedelic experiences with different medicines for myself. I've watched others have these incredible moments in healing that I've put into my book. But I wanted to bring that here. I wanted to be able to have those conversations with these incredible people who are doing this incredible work all over the world. Right now, it's almost mixed with the conversations that we're having again because it's almost one sided or the other on everything. But there was really no voice there for me to be able to listen and to be able to understand, what are they? What aren't they? Who are they for? Are they for everyone? Or are they not? What are the legal ramifications? How do I talk about this with my employer? What are these experiences that I'm hearing about? What is integration? What is this preparation thing that I'm hearing about? Because we don't often hear about those things in Western cultures. Ceremonial, clinical, ketamine. There are so many words that are being tossed out today that we really just have no idea. And if we just listen to one person, we hear one thing. If we hear another person, we hear another thing. So I want to bring everybody together. I want to be able to have a conversation with folks who, again, are doing incredible work in this field from a nonprofit, helping veterans like myself, but then also hearing the other side of the story of the veterans that maybe it didn't go so well for. I don't want this to be a commercial for psychedelic therapy. I want to be able to have the conversation about what psychedelics are. How do we even get the name? Because again, we talk about this empathogen and this entheogen, and we hear all of these words that are being thrown out. And we saw the FDA thing a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about blinding and all of this other stuff that a normal person wouldn't even know. So, how do we do this in a way where I can come to you every week? And that's how Newman was born. So every week, I hope that you join me in a conversation where we have these incredible folks from all over the world who are doing incredible work in and outside of traditional neuroscience. We'll have people who have had these incredible experiences and maybe some who have not. What are trips? What are trip sitters? What are facilitators? What does all of this even mean to an average person like you and me who is struggling with depression? They're struggling with anxiety and they're trying to figure out a way to bring it all together. Maybe you're a veteran like me who had post traumatic stress. Maybe you're somebody who just has chronic pain and you're trying to figure out how to deal with that, join me on this show. Join me on this journey as I bring these incredible people together every week where we talk about the crossroad of science and enlightenment. Welcome to Neuma.